Hello, TikTok and YouTube, welcome to part 10. And I'll share, whoops. Don't know what happened there. Right, we're going to the Nintendo Switch console inner area. We're doing our first quiz. Welcome in. When it comes to wireless communication on the Switch 2, all sorts of types are possible. There's online communication via Wi-Fi, communication via Bluetooth between the Nintendo Switch 2 console and other devices such as Joy-Con 2, near-field communication NFC with Amiibo, and local communication between consoles. Quite a list, huh? And since none of these communication methods involve cables, you don't have to worry about anything getting in the way or tangled up. Wireless communication can be very handy indeed. Many forms of wireless communication and Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, NFC and local communication are all possible. Whoo-wee! Now, 3 antennas. Within the Switch 2 console there are 3 antennas. Those 3 antennas exchange signals with other devices. They're used to connect devices such as Joy-Con 2, Nintendo Switch 2, Pro Controllers, or Bluetooth headphones. They can also be used via Wi-Fi to connect to the internet, or to other Nintendo Switch 2 consoles. In case you're wondering, the parts encasing the entire console and the parts around the antenna have an additional function. They can actually help the antennas work. The Switch 2 console has 3 antennas. The parts that encase the console also help the antennas. Great, we're going to have 5 questions. The Wi-Fi signal used for online communication and the Bluetooth signal used for the devices such as Joy-Con 2 controllers can get mixed up. Without employing extra measures, to prevent this, it could result in poor communication between devices. So to help prevent this, we implemented ways to keep the signals apart. For example, we can use Wi-Fi or Bluetooth but not both. The console switches back and forth between these 2 types of communication extremely quickly. It also ever so slightly offsets the signal frequency. These measures in place, the signals have a much lower risk of getting muddled. The human body and antennas. Here's an interesting fact for you. Did you know that it is actually difficult for radio signals to pass through the human body? Yes. Yes, I did. So when the console's using wireless communication, If your hands or bodies are close to the antennas, there's a chance it may weaken the signal. We took steps to make sure that the signal won't get weakened too much. One way we did so was by considering the positioning of the antennas when designing the Nintendo Switch 2 console. We did our best to ensure that your hands are out of the way of the antennas when using handheld mode. As for Joy-Con 2 controller antennas, there are different ways to hold the controller depending on the game, so we tried to distribute the antennas evenly as best we could. Then there is the antenna in the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller. There's only one way to hold the Pro controller, so we kept the antenna away from your expected hand position. Basically, the antennas were positioned based on where you would be holding a controller or console. It's difficult for radio signals to pass through the human body. Antennas are placed away from your hands. Well, I feel it. In the past, Nintendo game consoles used cables for communication, but somewhere on, there's gradual shift to wireless technology. It used to be that when you wanted to connect your game consoles together to play, it used to be that way when you wanted to connect your game consoles together. For instance, Game Boy or Game Boy Advance systems, you would need a special cable to link them. Later, wireless adapter for use with the Game Boy Advance system enabled wireless communication as did the DS. As for controllers up to the GameCube, Nintendo controllers had to be connected with a cable. Then came the device with wireless technology, the Nintendo GameCube Wavebird. Wireless controller used dedicated wireless, while the Wii remote used Bluetooth. A similar shift can be seen with regards to internet connections. The GameCube console had to be connected to the internet via a LAN cable, all the way up to the Wii U had LAN cable. Actually, no, they didn't. They removed the LAN port. GameCube was the last console with the LAN port, aside from Switch. OLED. You could buy an adapter, I believe. The DS system and Wii console have used Wi-Fi for this. Starting from the 2000s, the number of Nintendo devices utilizing wireless communication steadily increased. Right. Question number 1. Which of the following can communicate wirelessly with the Nintendo Switch 2 console? Hanafuda playing cards. No. Game & Watch console. No. Alarmo. No, it's Amiibo. Antennas. Umbrellas. Shockwaves, radio waves. Human body and metal. Rather than metal. Physical cables. Many circuit board parts. On the Nintendo Switch 2, let me do this. On the Nintendo Switch 2 console circuit board, there are twice as many parts as there were on the Nintendo Switch console circuit board. The most common type of part used is a capacitor. These are used to help maintain stable electrical signals. As the Switch 2 console exchanges electrical signals at much higher speeds than the Nintendo Switch console does, the slightest instability could cause it to stop working properly. So what we did, we used even more capacitors to ensure these electrical signals were disrupted as little as possible. By enabling the exchange of stable high-speed electrical signals in this way, the Switch 2 console can run at high speeds. The Switch 2 circuit board uses twice as many parts, and its high number of parts helps the console operate at high speeds. This is the circuit board inside the Switch 2 console. It might seem like it's just a single layer to you at first, but this single sheet is actually made up of more than 10 thin layers. Each of these thin layers contains wiring that connects one component to another. The wires are a bit like the human nervous system. There are thousands of thin wires on the console circuit board. Each layer uses a slightly different wiring layout. We designed it as we were trying to solve a puzzle with our hands. Wiring challenges. As you may already know, the circuit board for the Switch 2 console has over 10 layers and thousands of wires. But the wiring isn't just about connecting all the components together. Other things need to be considered too. For instance, it's not possible to have wires crossing on a single layer. The wires have to be narrower than 0.1 millimeters to avoid overlap. The length of the wiring is important too. When an electronic signal runs through a wire, it's about as fast as the speed of light. Now consider the fact that this exchange takes place in both a fraction of a billionth of a second. When you have several wires sending data together, they will all need to be the same length, or else the signals will arrive at different times. So we had to make sure the length of each wire was matching, ensuring that the signals arrive at the same time. And one more thing, we made sure that the wires are not too long, as the signals could become too weak to reach the destination. Just like if you have over hundreds of meters of internet cable, your internet signal will drop or become weaker. If a wire is too long, it'll be weak. Just a little bit of knowledge I had. And not too close to each other, as the signals could get mixed up. Very fast signals run through wiring. Measures are in place to ensure that signals arrive at the right time, without degrading or getting mixed up. Games use electricity, no crap. Games use a lot of electricity. The Switch 2 console is typically used to play games. Really? So it's also quite likely to need a lot of electricity. You know, shit. If you were to use multi-purpose smart device, which is not just used for games for all day, similar electricity would be used by the Nintendo Switch 2 console in about 3 hours. Incidentally, more than half of this electricity is used by the main computer, which is called the System on a Chip. This means System on a Chip. Because the Switch 2 console typically runs games to use a lot of electricity. No crap! Question number 1. Yeah. How many thin layers comprise 5 over 10? Hold up. Speed of light. The main computer. Hey, I don't want to do the next one. We'll have a look at it. And then we'll end off. Trying to spread out everything we need to do in this area. Electromagnetic noise. When there is an electric current running through the circuit board's wiring inside the Switch 2 console, there will always be electromagnetic noise present. If a lot of electromagnetic noise were to be emitted from the console, nearby devices might not work properly. Electromagnetic noise doesn't easily penetrate metal, so to prevent a lot of it from escaping the console, we wrap the areas that emit a lot of it in metal. This was done even for the main computer called the SoC. This is metal. That is, metal was wrapped around the SoC to prevent it from emitting a lot of electromagnetic noise. Static electricity. When the weather is dry and temperature is low, the next time your fingers touch metal, you may feel a little shock. This is static electricity. If static electricity hits a game console, the console could become unresponsive or break altogether. We wouldn't want that to happen. So we've employed a few tricks in place where your fingers are likely to touch metal. The game card slot and the Joy-Con 2 magnetic connector areas are two such places. For example, where the parts to soften the impact of a sudden jolt or static electricity, as well as spots that absorb it. These spots stop the static electricity from getting to parts that it might otherwise easily damage. The contour is designed to prevent damage from static electricity as much as possible. Two types of materials stuck together. The main chassis of the Switch 2 console, which has the other parts made from two types of materials. These materials are very tightly attached to each other. One magnesium alloy shown in orange and the other is plastic shown in black. The magnesium alloy forms the inner part. It's strong and robust and also serves to reduce electromagnetic noise. Then there's the outer layer of plastic. Even when the unit gets warm, the plastic lets you touch the console without it feeling too hot. Welcome in! Weird. We stuck these two materials together to make full use of them. The contour itself is thinner than if we had made it entirely out of plastic. And there's more space on the inside too. Tap, tap, tap. Whoops, tap, 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 tap. The chassis that has the console's inner parts is made from two types of material: magnesium alloy and plastic. We considered the strengths of these two materials when designing the console. On top of the Switch 2's console, you'll find a USB Type-C connector. It can be used to charge the console's battery. This means that the console can be played handheld mode or tabletop mode even though charging. And that's not all. The USB Type-C connector can also be used to connect to a Nintendo Switch 2 camera to the console. The camera can be used while playing games in TV mode, tabletop mode, or handheld mode. There's one thing to keep in mind though. The upper USB Type-C connector cannot be used to connect the console to the Switch 2 dock. So please do not attempt to turn the console upside down and insert into the dock that way. There's a USB Type-C connector at the top of the Switch 2 console. Can be used to charge or connect a camera. Woo! Nintendo Switch 2 console volume 2. Question number 1. Static electricity. Magnesium alloy. Can you not insert the coins in the dock? There's a quiz over here. Micro SD expansion, which seems is only like gonna be 2, 3, 4, 5. Whatever, we'll do it. Micro SD express card can be used to save various data on various Nintendo Switch 2 data. Download games as well as screenshots and videos taken with the caps button can be saved to one. You can use micro SD card express card if you run out of space in your console system memory. The Nintendo Switch console is compatible with micro SD cards. Switch 2 is micro SD cards. SD Express cards. Micro SD Express slot is located beneath the stand on the back of the console. In case it helps, the slot with Micro SD Express written beside it. Yeah, no crap. If you run out of space on the console system memory, it can be expanded using the SD card. Now, about Micro SD Express cards. While the manual looks similar to Micro SD cards, they're not the same. Flip on over and you'll notice more pins. You'll notice the difference. It has a lot more pins. With these pins, data can be read and written in a new way. Much more since the original pins are still there. It can even work as Micro SD card. That means Micro SD cards are compatible with Nintendo Switch consoles too. Wow! Micro SD Express cards have more pins. With the new pins, data can be read can be read to and written from them in different ways. A new way to read and write data. With the microSD Express cards, the Switch 2 console has a new way to read and write data. Compared to when you use a microSD card on a Switch console, assuming a buffer size of 4 megabits for both consoles, the read speed will be about 8 times as fast. Keep in mind though, different microSD Express cards will typically read and write at different speeds. Some games may also be doing more in the background than just loading. So it doesn't mean that the loading speed will actually be around 8 times as fast. Generally speaking, reading and writing speeds are faster for microSD Express cards. Obviously. Switch 2 console is only capable or compatible with a specific type of microSD card. Its Express card, please note the microSD cards are incompatible. Switch 2 console takes advantage of speed and which microSD cards can read and write data. It goes always to make the gameplay experience as enjoyable for you as possible. There's one thing we should clarify about microSD cards. While they're not compatible with Nintendo Switch 2, that's not to say microSD cards are completely unusable. If you start screenshots and videos out to the microSD card that was used with Switch 2, with Switch 1 console, you can port data from the microSD card to the Switch 2 console system memory. And fun, let's like to get hot. Here we go. microSD Express card is fast. In fact, because it sends signals so quickly, it tends to get hot. Naturally, we tried as much as we can to avoid heat build-up. We thought about where to place the microSD card slot, and decided to have it near one of the air intakes to keep it cool. And on top of that, we kept the SD Express slot further away from our parts console that likely to get hot. We even applied graphite sheets to the microSD card Express slot. These sheets are very effective at transferring heat. So the sheets help spread heat around and cool the area down. microSD Express cards can get quite hot. The steps being taken in trying to prevent an inserted microSD card from heating up. microSD Express card is the only one. Good. Which of the following can be inserted here you can use with the Switch 2 console? Birthday cards, game cards, download cards, microSD. It has more pins. A lot faster. Inline speeds. Something hang up. Not that hard. And how many more do we have left? Quite a lot, actually. 3D sound. When you play games that support surround sound on the Switch 2 console, you'll be able to enjoy 3D sound whether it's coming from the Switch 2 console speakers or a pair of headphones. This will work not just for Switch 2 games, but for Switch games too. With 3D sound, you may even believe that sound is coming from places where there aren't any speakers. When you're listening to 3D sound with the headphones connected to the Switch 2 console, game sounds are processed to make it seem like they're coming from different directions. So they've got 3D sound like PS5. Even when not using headphones. For instance, if sound is meant to be coming from the right side in game, you'll hear that sound in your right ear slightly sooner. The left-right balance is calculated like this to reach your ears at the right time. This means that there is a slight delay between the sound that comes out of the left and right sides of the headphones. And that's not all. We use a dummy head microphone to simulate how sounds change based on several factors, including how it bounces around the external ear in complex ways and reverberating through the head and so on. And by doing so, it'll feel as if the sound is coming from different directions. For 3D sound coming from the Switch 2 console speakers, it doesn't work the same way as it does with headphones. When using a pair of headphones, sound from left to right can be played to each respective ear. In the case of speakers though, you'll still hear sounds from the right speaker in your left ear and vice versa. This sound would be a mix, would mix and jumble and would become difficult to make out. So the console speakers employ a certain trick. They cancel out the sound that would reach the opposite ear. So any sound that would reach your left ear plays, the right speaker will... So when a sound that would reach your left ear plays from the right speaker, complex signals played along with it that cancel out the sound. And as a result of this, sounds from the left will only reach the left, and sounds from the right will only reach the right. Console Speakers Volume 2. Question number 1. To enjoy the games with 3D sound on the Switch 2 console, which feature may not be compatible with surround sound. When using headphones to listen to 3D sound on the Nintendo Switch 2 console, what happens to the sounds on either side coming from different directions? They're cancelled out. I don't know. What? Yeah. Oh. It says it at the end, the timing's offset. I didn't see that. quiz. Only 3, great, they're going to be difficult. 1.2 times battery capacity in terms of performance. Switch to console is more powerful than a Switch console in many ways. That means it also consumes more power. We've done our best to reduce the amount of power uses, of course, but even after we optimize the console, it still needs more power. If you had used the same battery that was used in the Switch console, you wouldn't have been able to use Switch 2 console as long. So, for Switch 2 console, we opted for a different battery. This new battery has 1.2 times capacity at the Nintendo Switch console. 5220 milliamp hour battery. Milliamp stands for milliamp per hour. An increase of 20% still wouldn't be necessary, which wouldn't necessarily mean you'll be able to use console for 20% longer. But we did our best to maximize time yet you can play on it. By the way, longevity. We believe the video game console should be long-term companions. We'd like to be able to keep them for many years. That's why we did our best to make sure that the Nintendo Switch 2 console's battery lasts a long time. There are a few things we did to try and achieve this. When charging the battery, we purposely tried not to supply it with too much power. As a result, the energy output to the console is reduced slightly, reducing the risk of damaging the battery. Also, we've made it so that the fast charging is not possible, because it can easily drain the battery. We want to ensure that players can enjoy their console for a long time, and that means balancing battery life and battery longevity. Nintendo has a history of using batteries to power game consoles, lithium-ion batteries in particular, console battery capacity. Console battery capacity has been improving with successive generations. 600 mAh is Game Boy SP, 850 mAh is DS, 1300 mAh is 3DS, and Switch was 43100, so 4310 mAh. And Switch 2 is 5220 mAh. Incidentally, the Game Boy and Game Boy Advance systems used dry cell batteries. In those days, if you went out of batteries while playing, you had to replace the dry cell batteries with new ones. Very not yep, deserve a quiz, come on. Come on, come on, come on! Battery! Come on. 1.2. Helps prevent it. Degradation. Dry cell. We did this one. Welcome in. The switch to screen can produce very vivid colours. A deep vibrant red, for instance, after this quiz went off. In order to produce such rich colours, a very thick colour filter is used. However, when you use a thick filter, the resulting image will be darker. If you compensate for this with more brightness, the battery will drain more quickly. We didn't want to compromise on battery life, so instead, to avoid the image getting too dark, we made the pixels as large as they could be. What's made other customization along those lines? LCD liquid crystal display. The Nintendo Switch 2 screen uses a liquid crystal display LCD. It works in much the same way as Switch 1 console screen, the original, not the OLED, the original. But the difference is that it's brighter and more vivid. Also, the Switch OLED model uses an OLED screen, they mentioned it. OLED screens are very vivid. But the Switch 2 console's LCD screen is also quite striking. While it's true that OLED model colours are a little richer, Switch 2 console screen can be brighter. The screen is also HDR compatible. Might be interesting to compare these screens if you have access to multiple consoles or two. Refresh rate and LCD. The number of times per second that a screen changes its image is called a refresh rate. For example, if the image were to change 60 times per second, you would say that its refresh rate is 60 Hz. In the case of the Switch 2 console screen, it supports a refresh rate of 120 Hz. It also supports VRR, which can switch between different variable refresh rates. But each of these features have also been fine-tuned. If the image changes 120 times per second, this certainly results in quick changes. But due to the speed, anything that interferes with the signal, such as resistance, will have a more severe effect. This can ruin the image as a result, so I had to implement a few ways to reduce the amount of interference. Conversely, when the image changes fewer times per second, the colours gradually fade and the image gets darker. So we also had to find ways to ensure that the colours don't fade easily. Welcome in! Number 1. Yeah, I'd like to have a plasma screen. Such our technology plasma was. Ching! Oh. I guess we gotta do more console insights. We'll do these and then we'll end off. In terms of screen size, the Switch 2 console screen is about 7.9 inches. The Switch 1 was 6.2, and the OLED was 7. You can see the Switch 2 console screen is noticeably bigger. Yup. In fact, it's the biggest screen of all Nintendo consoles today. This makes it even more impressive looking in tabletop and handheld modes. It's also easier to see when playing with others. Just to clarify, the screen is actually a tiny bit more than 7.9 inches. It measures in at slightly over 7.9 inches. The Switch 2 console screen is largest of any Nintendo console. The benefits of a larger screen. The Nintendo Switch 2 console's larger screen has a number of benefits. You might not be aware of some of them. For instance, having a bigger screen means the computer can do even more calculations. How so? Well, the more calculations a computer performs, the harder it gets. The larger the device, the less likely it is to heat up, hence the computer gets to perform a lot of calculations. In other words, the bigger the screen, the bigger the console. Wait, the bigger the screen, the bigger the console. The larger the console, the less likely it is to heat up. If it doesn't heat up as much, the computer gets to do lots of calculations. The more calculations it can do, the more pictures and characters it can calculate. Inside, the computer can calculate lots of pictures and characters. The images should look clear and smooth, and more characters can be moving around at once. Hopefully you'll notice a difference. The Switch 2 console screen lights up fully to display images. The light produced by white LEDs, the single LED emits a tiny final light as they are. These little lights aren't enough. These little lights aren't enough to light up the whole screen. With the use of translucent plate, called light garden plate, the light of LED can be spread. There's a slight unevenness to this plate that reflects light in a complex and uneven way and makes it spread out. In this way, lighting up a bunch of LEDs next to the plate, the touch screen can be lit up. To ensure uniform brightness of the screen, we experimented with different patterns and evenness, eventually settling on the current design, which you're not going to tell us. I feel like there's going to be another screen quiz. Just over 7.9 inches. Feel human emotions. Naughty. Now feels embarrassed. Sorry, ashamed. Delight. Illuminating touch screen starts out as what? Small points of light. Yep, thought so. We'll do this one and that should be the last one. One thing about Switch 2 console screen is that it's actually slightly different height from the area around it. How slight, you ask? Wow, the screen is lower by the thickness of a piece of paper. It's barely noticeable, but this height difference prevents the screen from coming into contact with the floor or other surfaces. The screen is lower in the area around it, but about the thickness of a sheet of paper. A thinner screen. An interesting fact about Switch 2's console screen is made up of overlapping parts. That's the LCD liquid crystal display. A shadow-resistant film, a screen cover, transparent plastic, 2 polarizing plates, 2 pieces of glass, a touch sensor, a light guiding plate, an LED film, and so on. For these parts laid on top of each other, there was a risk of the screen becoming too thick. There wouldn't have been space left for other parts, so we made the cover out of a thin tempered glass. For other parts, we chose the thinnest possible ones we could find. Basically, we designed the screen to be as thin as possible. A rather long and thin IC. Often on the inside of a computer, there's a component called an IC integrated circuit. They're typically square-shaped. As for the IC, that controls the switch to console, screen, and touch input. It's quite thin, measuring about 30mm by 1mm. It has to control more than 2 million pixels, 1920 by 1080, as well as over 900 touch sensors. It uses 300 wires to achieve this. In order to be able to attach all the terminals connecting so many wires, the IC had to be long and thin. Please be the last screen. Question number 1. Sheet of paper. A sheet of paper. The screen. Long and thin. Please be the last one. Oh! And I'm going to be looking for more quizzes, so I'll get to the next quiz. And I'll end off. Game card slot! Alright everyone, I'll see you all in my next video, which will be tomorrow and doing more. Welcome to Alright everyone.